Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about the executive branch of government in Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. And I'm going to go with you through the executive branch. Now it's quite short. In your book here, you just have about 2 pages dealing with the executive branch. It's really short. And a lot of that are commentaries. So you don't have much to read, but there's a tremendous amount of fabulous information. In fact, the entire presidency has to operate on what's based in this Constitution. Let me refresh your memories a little bit about the U.S. Constitution and the 3 branches of government. I'll put this down for a sec. You may remember that the Constitution divides our federal government into 3 branches, the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, and gives powers to each one. So we have the House and the Senate, and the election of people in the House and the Senate. The people directly elect the members of the House, and then people directly elect members of their state legislatures in their various states. And in the early days of the Republic, the framers of the Constitution did not want the Senate to be directly elected. So the people would elect their state legislatures, and then the state legislatures would choose 2 people from their state to be in the U.S. Senate. So people did not vote on U.S. senators at all in the early days of the Republic. By 1913, however, there is a constitutional amendment, the 17th Amendment, which said that we will have direct election of the U.S. Senate. So that's the way that's done. In the Constitution, in Article 2, though, it will say, right in the beginning, the executive power shall be vested in a president. He shall hold his office during a term of 4 years, and together with the vice president chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. And then there is a discussion of how the president is elected. I've got it on the chart here. The people select their state legislatures. This is how they set it up in 1787. The state legislatures would choose a number of people from their state to be in the Electoral College, the same number of people as they had senators and representatives. And then the Electoral College would vote and choose the president and vice president. Originally, the people did not vote for the president or vice president at all. Today, the people vote, but what they're voting for, the people are voting for who's going to be in the Electoral College. So, for example, if in the next election, George Romney, that's the father, Mitt Romney wins Texas, gets the most votes in Texas, he will get all of Texas's electoral votes. And that would be 38 votes. And they'll all go to him. But what they're really doing is choosing electors. In California, if President Obama wins and takes California, he'll get all of California's votes, electoral votes, and it will be done here. I've done another show explaining the Electoral College a little more. But then they choose the president and the vice president. Over here, the president then will appoint all of the federal judges. They're all appointed for life. Now that's all in Article 3. But going on with Article 2, no person shall be president unless you're a natural-born citizen or a citizen at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. In the case of removal of the president from office or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the office, the vice president will take over. Now, we have that in the body of the Constitution, but we added an amendment, the 25th Amendment, and that would be at the end of the Constitution, Amendment 25. And Amendment 25 says this: whenever there's a vacancy in the office of vice president, the president shall nominate a vice president who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses of Congress. All right, we know what the line of succession is. We know the president, vice president, speaker of the House, president pro tem of the Senate, secretary of state, and on down through the cabinet. But what happens when there is a vacancy in the vice presidency? We had this happen when Nixon was president. His vice president was Spiro Agnew, who resigned. Nixon then, using the 25th Amendment, appointed Gerald Ford to be his vice president, and the Congress agreed. Later, Nixon resigned the presidency. Gerald Ford moved up to the presidency and appointed Nelson Rockefeller, from the governor of New York, to be his vice president. So Gerald Ford was the only unelected president we've ever had, and it was based on the 25th Amendment. There's another part of the 25th Amendment. What happens when the president does not die or resign, but becomes disabled? Let's say a president had a stroke, a president had mental illness. Any number of things could happen. Whenever the president transmits to the speaker his written declaration he's unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office, and until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the vice president as acting president. So he writes a letter, I can't do my job. The vice president takes over, he writes a letter, I'm back, I'm healthy. He resumes his powers unless, and it goes on to say, that the vice president and a majority of the cabinet don't think so, and then Congress will vote on it. So we've never used that part of it in terms of the voting. However, when Reagan was president and had an operation, George Bush Sr. actually took over for 6 hours as acting president under the 25th Amendment. Okay, back to the body of the Constitution, Article 2. The president receives for his services a compensation, which is $400,000 a year. Then there's the oath of office, and then the duties and powers of the president. The president is commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. The president can require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments. So the president is chief foreign policy maker and also chief administrator of this huge federal bureaucracy here, and there are over 2 million civilian employees of the federal bureaucracy, and also the military, millions of the military as well. Let's see here. He shall have the power, with the advice and consent of the Senate, to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur, and shall nominate and appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, etc., etc. The president shall have power to fill up vacancies that happen during the recess of the Senate. And then it says, the president shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the state of the Union, and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. And he does this every year in January. He will appear before the Congress, joint session, and give his State of the Union. What is the State of the Union? And normally a president will say the State of the Union is strong, and then list for Congress things he would like to see them pass into legislation. The last part of that paragraph says, another thing the president shall do is to be sure that the laws are faithfully executed. Faithfully executed. So here's the optimum bottom line of this entire discussion. The legislative branch makes the law. The executive branch carries out or executes the law. And the judicial branch interprets the law. Tells us what it means. So here is just a brief, quick overview of the Constitution. We touched on the 25th Amendment. Also, please look at the 22nd Amendment. That's also involving the president and restricts him to 2 terms or a total of 10 years. So this is the Constitution, and everything the president does revolves around what's in this very important document. Thanks. See you next time.